Hi, thanks for joining me today. I'm Carrie Waltz and I share tips, tools, and techniques for the artist in you. And today is a video that I came across while I was trying to clean out some things, and I had videoed this demo of painting a leaf when I was visiting my mom back in December. It was early December, so there were still fall leaves around. And I just wanted to share it with you because it really did show a good technique of what happens when you paint wet paint next to wet paint on purpose, and it allows the blending similar to a wet on wet. Wet on wet is when the surface is actually wet and you add paint on top. So I kind of said it wrong in the video, so please excuse when I say wet on wet. It's wet into wet, and you want the paint to be about the same viscosity or consistency, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So I hope you enjoy the video. It is the beginning of my watercolor journaling nature study. So have a great day, and I will see you soon. This is a watercolor journal I made several months ago out of Arches 140-pound 100% cotton paper, and I haven't done anything in it yet. I could even remove that and make a cover. So I think I'll just do the cover today, and I'm going to do it with the fall leaves that I found this morning. I have with me one of my little kits that has pretty much everything in it that I need. It came with the watercolor paper. It even has water in a little bottle if I need it. It's an old camera case that I'm using. I'll show it to you later, but not in this video. This is one of my newest. This is one of my newest palettes, Nomadic Artist, that I filled with different colors, and then I made a key. So these colors should be bright enough to be able to paint this leaf. And what I love about this leaf, it has variations of soft shifts of color that will be done wet on wet because there's a soft blur. So because it's wet on wet, I want to make sure that I have enough water in my brush. One of the things I want to look at is that the veins are lighter. All right, if the vein is lighter, how am I going to protect that? Well, I can either paint it later. I can try to paint around it. That's kind of a pain. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of the white Prismacolor. I'm not really sure if this will repel enough because the vein isn't exactly white, but we'll see how it does. This has a little bit of wax in it, and we'll just give it a try. All right, so I'm going to work on one side of the leaf at a time because this has a nice dividing line. And I know I want to use green, so I'm going to take my water and get a little puddle of green. Anytime I want to do wet on wet, I want to start with some puddles of paint already mixed up. And wet on wet can be two different things. It can be wet on wet paint on wet paper, or it can be wet paint on wet paint. Because I want the colors to be pretty vibrant, I want wet paint on wet paint. So I'm cleaning my brush just by wiping it off here. The orangey tones here, I'm going to start with this, make a puddle. That is brighter and lighter in value than what the leaf is. So I'm going to add some colors to that. So I look here and see what color. To me, I like the vibrancy of the rose, permanent rose. That's the third one over. So I'm going to mix some of that and put that near it. I'm squeezing my brush a little bit to get out some of the color. Now, what you can do too is have a test sheet. I don't have one with me right now, so I'm just using my paper towel kind of as my test. And then the brown will be the Van Dyke brown, which is this third one. You'll see on my palette there's already a brown there. So I'm just going to wet this a bit and add that here, because anytime you have leftover watercolor, you can still use it. That's one thing I love about watercolor. And then I'll want to mix my own shadows. This has an indigo blue, and I like the fact that there's a little bit, you know, a lot of this is warm tones. So when I have warm tones, I like to counteract with a cool shadow. So I'm going to put some blue here. I don't want it totally blue. I want it more of a gray blue. So in order to make it more of a gray blue, I add something opposite on the color wheel. Opposite on the color wheel is orange. And that's almost an orange, so it's kind of a reddish orange. I'm going to add just a little bit of that. Okay, that's way too much red. So I'm going to come back. Whoops, picked up brown, sorry. So I'm going to come back and add more blue to that. And then when I water that down, it's a pretty good gray blue. So I'm all right with that. All right, so let's see. You have to let these brushes breathe, and it has the water, the air coming in and out. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I'm going to start with the outside edge of this leaf because that is going to be a definite hard edge. So I'm going to lay that in and a little bit at this point. That could be a little darker, so I'm just going to go straight into the paint right there because watercolor dries lighter than when you paint it. So I don't want to do too much of this because I want this to still be wet. Wipe my brush, pick up the yellow that I've already created, and I let the yellow touch that brown. Okay, so I'm going to do that over here, and it could be a little more orange, so I'm just going to mix that in. Add a little more orange there. I can mix those two together, but I want to be real careful that I don't go too far with that. While that's still wet, I want to pick up the green and let that hit that. Drag the rest to the center. So with wet on wet, you don't want something to totally dry. You want to create those colors while you can. So I'm just continuing the green. It gets a little brighter in through here, so I'm just picking it straight up. And I'm coming on this side of the leaf, this side of the vein. I'm leaving spots where other colors are going to be. While it's wet, I'm going to pick up a little bit of that orange, dab that in here. Orange is very close to the opposite of green. Green opposite is red. So I want to be careful as I put this in that I don't overmix it. I just let the colors shift on their own. And I've got to continue on while this is wet. Now I'm coming, whoops, see, didn't wipe my brush off good, so that wasn't well, it's turning into orange up here anyway, so it really won't matter. So I'm going to pick up some of that yellow orange, lay that in. It's a little brighter in there, so I'm going to go ahead and pick up more of that red tone, come back and pick up some of the yellow, carry that onto the other side. And I've got to work quick. I'm not speeding this video up. This is real time, so you can see what I'm doing. I want to blend this in, go into the green. I'm leaving just a little bit of hint where I probably shouldn't have gone back over there. I want that dark at the tip, so while that's wet, I pick up the brown. Sorry if this table's a little wobbly. I'm not in my normal filming place. Okay, but you see how the lovely colors are just shifting with the leaf. I want a little bit of brown over here. Okay, so now if I want to, it's always good to leave a soft edge. Don't let it totally dry on you. So kind of did there. So I'm going to come back and hopefully it won't create too much of a bloom. All right, you see I'm running out of yellow, so I need to come back over here, mix some more, make a little puddle, try to make it pretty vibrant. So because it's coming up in here to where I have quite a bit of bold color. Now I've got a little too much yellow, so just add that in there. I can hear my watch hit the table. Not used to that. Sorry. Might have to take it off. It's driving me crazy. All right, so anytime you can line up your paint on one side of the, I'm going to take it off, one side of the vein for the other, then it allows you to go a little, I'm right here. So I've got to go back to the brown. There's a lot of brown in here. And I kind of got off on the wrong part of the petal, but that's okay. Ooh, see how dark that was because I went straight into the brown. While I've got dark brown on here, I can add a little bit more to this. And be very careful not to overwork. Okay, so got some brown going on in here. It's gonna, whoops, got out of line, dadgummit. I'll make that part just a little wider. Maybe you won't see the, the pencil mark. And then we get into the red again. And I'm going to pick up some more green. When I pick it up straight from the palette, it's not going to be as wet because I didn't have it in a puddle here. So I'm working wet on wet, so I need more paint in my puddle. So now I'm getting up to this tip where there's a little green in the middle, and there's a lot of red on the outside that leads into the brown. It's a little too red, so add yellow to it. Got out of line just a little bit right there. Maybe I can put a shadow under there. Add little bits of red so it bleeds in together. Come back with the tip. See how I'm pointing my brush to be the tip, makes the points. The direction of your brush makes a big difference. So I'm going to turn this around when I want this point. It's so much easier to lay the brush down like this than come from the other direction. Okay, that's a little rough in there, but I'm going to leave it alone because sometimes when I go back and rework something, it makes it worse. All right, so right now that line of green is a little harsh, so I'm going to at least pick up a little bit of that. And green comes in here, blends into the red. I have some more orange out at the end. All right, I'm overworking this part because I didn't pay attention. I didn't turn my painting when I should have to see this corner better. See, so turn what you're looking at with what you're painting so it aligns together and you can see what part you're on. See, I want that a little darker. And see how impatient I am? I want to make it that way right now. All right, I'm ignoring that tear in the leaf. And I'm going to come, there's a little point here, here. A lot of the top of this leaf is brown. Whoops, I need more water in the paint so it flows. Again, I want wet on wet. It's a lot easier when the paint is wet. And I think my cousin just got back from his work, so heard the door. I don't think Mom's back yet. All right, here we go. I'm looking at that leaf. It has green all the way down to here. Comes around. And I want some yellow in there. Kind of an orange. There we go. And if it's not exactly like the leaf you're looking at, I mean, who's going to know? Nobody. Okay. Whoop, didn't rinse my brush out very good, did I? Probably didn't at all. Okay. That looks a lot more vibrant than the other side, so we'll see. We might have to come back and add in a minute. You layer watercolor when it's dry. Really need to let it dry. Okay. Coming to more yellow. So I'm going to throw that in. Probably not wet enough. And you can spritz your paper, but I haven't on this one. I like the fact that there's some kind of really red spots in this part. But don't get distracted. I'm finishing up the brown over here, dragging it into the watercolor that's already there. I squeeze my brush just a little bit more to allow the water to soften the edge of the paint. And dragging this direction. You know, if you're doing the point coming this way, you barely touch your paper, you press down and lift up. Okay, my hand got in something there. Oh well. Okay, wipe your brush, pick up more green, and come back in up under there. This side of the leaf is way thicker than it should be. I didn't notice that when I was drawing it. That's okay. You can draw it more accurately than I did. Maybe you'll take a little more time than I did. I didn't take very much time in the drawing of it. Way too much green in my My brush didn't wipe it off very good. Want a little more orange in there. And then that orange then goes into the brown. So I'll just pick that straight up since it's going to the edge and doesn't have to be wet. It's harder getting the points. See how it's like, this is not the way to do it. You should turn it around, put the point down, drag it this way so the wet of your brush is hitting that. Wipe the brush off. Pay attention. See, that dried too soon. So see if I can wet it without messing it up. When I look at this, when I'm looking at the leaf, it's actually a little more pointed here than what I drew. Again, drawing doesn't have to be totally accurate. It's all right. It's just getting some therapy. Much needed therapy. It just puts me in a better state of mind. There's a little red in through here, so I'm adding a little bit of that. And there's some speckled stuff through, markings in it. So you can be as detailed as you want. I'm going to come back over here where it's dry and look again at some of the variations in the leaf. There's a little bit more intensity in the red in here and along here. So when you put red over green, it's not going to be as bright as if you painted it that way to start with. So that's why it would be better if you wanted it a vibrant color that you wouldn't have the complement up underneath it. But I'm just adding it in here. I just think it just creates a more interesting leaf. And there's a little bit of shadow there that I'll get in right here. Okay, and the leaf, the vein itself is kind of a pink tone. That's a little wet right there, so I'm going to be careful with that. Have it come out right here. Kind of skip the wet part and paint in where I put a little bit of that pencil to help with that. Now, if I want it lighter than that, I kind of think I do. I'm going to come back with my white pencil. This is a Signo, Uniball Signo. Okay, so it is one of the more opaque gel pens on the white. And I can come back and reestablish where those leaf veins were. I can hear Tom the cat crying for more treats. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and then I'm going to hit it with a pale pink. While that's drying, I'm going to come back to my shadow color, and I'm going to look and see where I drew that shadow. See if I can see my drawing. Okay, right in here. Got to be careful not to hit the leaf. Right here. Probably be, I'm barely touching the paper with the brush. If you want a lighter shadow color, then you can wet the paper first or add more water to your shadow. If you want the shadow to blur out, then you would want your paper wet. But right now I'm just going to kind of have a hard edge shadow. That's good enough. When this dries, I'll come back and erase what little bit of pencil I see. If it bothers me, if it doesn't bother me, it stays on there. And I just change the shape of that shadow because I changed the shape of that leaf, which is fine. But I'm trying to work fairly fast so that one wet area can move right into the other wet area. You can see I got a little color on my hand somehow and got that transferred. So that pen is dry enough now. I'm going to pick up just a touch of this orangey color. Let's see what color. That's close enough. And then when I paint over the white gel pen, that looks more like the color of the vein of the leaf. And it was easier than trying to mask it off. Okay. I think I'm done with that one. What do you think? Learned anything? All right, one thing that I'm looking at, I think, do I want to mess with that? I think I do. My brush is not very wet. I'm going to come back in and kind of blend over the area that was and kind of speckle it out so that it looks like that was on purpose. See if there's anything else. Yeah, I think when I'm looking at this, the way it undulates a little bit, there's parts of the green that are darker than others. So ooh, that's way dark. So I'm looking to add a little more dark on either side of that vein. Now what happens when part of the paper is the wet of the paper, then I'm just going to take the paint off and add a little softness here with water so that it blurs in instead of leaving a hard line. See, there's a line there, so I want to just wet that. So it creates a softer edge. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more to this other side. Right in here is too pale. It's also way too thick when you look at the leaf. That's okay. It's good therapy. You having therapy today? All right, so I could even add some more other colors in there, which I might. A little bit more in here. I'll add a little more of this orangey tone, orangey yellow. Make that a little brighter in there. It won't make it brighter if you don't clean your brush good. I really like the added dark because this does dry lighter. And I just have to be careful not to overdo it. Now when I'm looking at the leaf, the real leaf, there's a red dot right about there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. It's a little brighter over here. Pretty bright in through here. I want that a little brighter. I love fall. It's so pretty. Okay, now I need a little bit of shadow. There's no shadow under the stem, and I want enough. There's not one here, but I want it to kind of look. Well, let's make sure my color is right. I want to make sure that it looks a little like off the page. Lift it like the leaf is up off the surface. The shadow must connect to the object. There was a little gap there. See, there's a little white gap there. I need to connect that. Okay. All right. I enjoyed that. I feel better. All is well.